So we're doing now Sefer Shmuel, the book of Samuel 1, chapter 11, as we did chapter 10 next week. I'm going to take this opportunity to welcome everyone back. And I want to request that in the next class, in the future classes, you gentlemen will have with you a Tanach, not just book of Shmuel. So bring your Tanach with you. Any language, any type, just have the whole Tanakh, because we're going to be referencing, what do you say, makbilot? Parallel stories, parallel phrases, interconnections between different parts of this great work, the Tanakh. Also, I want to tell you guys that what we're doing a very basic pshat understanding of the text with how I read it. So I'm sharing with you my experience of the Tanakh. My experience of the Tanakh is not necessarily your experience. I encourage you all to spend time on your own, not just, don't let this be the only Tanakh class you go to. Of course, listen to other teachers, but also listen to yourselves. Read the book on your own, see what it tells you without any commentaries, okay? Try to limit the outside influence to translations. And before you look up even one commentary, finish the whole chapter. Ask yourself what you read in the chapter, what you see, what themes you have. Maybe make notes, write down those themes. Think in your own mind if there's any connection between does anything you read remind you, have a similar phrase, a similar number, a similar story, a similar theme, right, to something else you read. Write that down as well. It's before you begin, people read Rashi, people read Ibn Ezra, Barbanel, they're all great, but each one of these great commentators they're basically sharing with you how they saw it, but they had to at some point read the book on its own, in its own language, and let it speak to them before they can form their opinions they have, right? It's very important. So my message to you is to not rely on this class alone. Read on your own, read the book itself, just translations, meditate on it, let it talk to you, write down your summaries of what you understood, and listen to other classes as well if you have time, because whatever you're going to learn today, like what I'm teaching today, I've already read 20 years ago, 25 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago. And it's as new to me today as it was then. Today, when I sat down to prepare the class, I saw things that I didn't see in the past. I'm going to share some of them with you, right? But again, I can't teach you this book because book's like an experience, right? I can only guide you to having your own experience of reading the book. All right? Make sense what I'm saying? So, next.
They say, Rasi in Arabic means my head. First use your head and then look at the commentaries.
And then look up commentaries. And I'm going to ask you next week to bring a Tanakh. And this way we can broaden our view, and I'll give you tools how to notice patterns, how to notice. Sometimes the Tanakh will give you very limited hints to an idea or to a story. It doesn't tell you straight out, but he kind of hints it to you. He gives you little clues and how to pick up on those clues. Okay, so we're going to start the first verse in chapter 11. All right. Who you want to read? Chavod, Shmuel. Put you to work.
ויען נחש העמוני ויחן על יבש גלעד ויאמרו כל אנשי יבש אל נחש כרוד לנו ברית ונעבדך.
This is a good. This is a great marker. So I'm not great. I'm not great at drawing maps, okay? But we're going to do an approximate map of Israel, okay? The coastline, let's say, something like this, biblical tribal Israel, and this has the Jordan Valley, the Jordan River cutting through, right? And let's say over here is the Kinneret, okay? Everyone sees? Jabesh-Gilead, it's on the other side of the Jordan, okay? It's somewhere around here. This is where this incident takes place. Shaul and the kingdom is somewhere around here, okay, where we are right now. Jerusalem, Benjamin, not Jerusalem, but the area of Benjamin, Judea. Just for some background, this area is always more vulnerable. The other side of the Jordan is always more vulnerable to invasions, to being abused, to being attacked. And when Israel was very tribal, if these people were attacked, it wasn't always a problem of these people to come and help. So the mountains in Jabesh-Gilead sounds like, the dry, right? The desert, they created a tough people. And we had a bit of a history with Jabesh-Gilead. So for those of you who have read the book of Judges, you've come across Jabesh-Gilead at the end of the book of Judges. And it's very much connected to the story here. And since not all of you have a Tanach, I'm just going to give you a few small snippets of details that you need for the background to understand what we're going to read now, okay? There were some people here that were kind of disconnected from the main tribal confederacy of Israelites, okay? They live in Jabesh-Gilead. They were aligned with Benjamin, because Benjamin had land over here on this border, okay? And Shaul, we know, is from Benjamin. Who remembers the incident at the end of the book of Judges, the most tragic incident in maybe all of Tanakh?
The woman that was by rape.
Yes, the rape and murder of a woman in Benjamin in a very brutal and frankly disgusting fashion. The rest of the tribes were infuriated by it. They went to punish Benjamin. Benjamin defended himself pretty successfully and defeated all other tribes in the first few battles. And eventually the tribes overcame them and basically killed almost everyone, leaving 400 young men, okay? And those 400 young men of Benjamin were, at the end, it's kind of interesting that, again, a little bit off topic, but it's connecting to ours. The chapter begins with is justified tribal conflict. So you have one tribe, very evil, does bad things. They need to get punished and killed. War against them, and kind of who the good guys and the bad guys are. The good guys are the Israelites, the bad guys are Benjamin. Towards the end, when Benjamin is close to being extinct, something changes. The fighters that are wiping out Benjamin realize we don't want to be one tribe short. We can't wipe out a whole tribe. Like, this is one of the tribes of Jacob. And now they switch their priorities. Now what's important to them? What's important to them is to preserve Benjamin. How are we going to preserve Benjamin? They made an oath during the war that they're not going to let any of their women their daughters marry anyone from Benjamin. So now you have 400 male fighters left. They have no one to marry. What are we going to do? And it becomes a big project. They had come up with a solution, and the solution was there was women in Jabesh-Gilead that were aligned with Benjamin, and they were basically sent to marry the Benjaminites and restart the tribe. Now, why is all this important? Two things. One, this is the last time Jabesh-Gilead was mentioned. So Jabesh-Gilead features prominently in the horrific account of the Benjamin Israel civil war, so Israel against all of Benjamin. That's the first time it was mentioned. That's one connection. The other connection is Saul, what's his tribe? Benjamin. And Saul now, he's the big hero. He's going to reach his heyday. He's going to reach his high point. So where in the past Benjamin was bad, now we're seeing why it was important to preserve Benjamin. So there was something in Benjamin that was worthy of preserving, and it's being personified in this case by Saul. So Jabesh-Gilead, Benjamin, Saul, this is what we're going to see right now, okay? So Nahash the Ammonite, Nahash is a name, it means snake, right? And this is not the first war Ammon has with Israel, okay? And in the previous war Ammon had with Israel, it also had to do with this area, but we can't digress too much. Maybe we'll do that next week when you bring your own Tanachs. But Nahash attacks these guys, brother, besieges them, and they don't know how to react. They don't know what to do, right? So what do? They say we're gonna the Gilad people tell Nahash, let's make a treaty. We'll pay you a tax, and we don't have to go to war. They know they can't win the war. Interesting, they don't turn to Shaul. They don't turn to their brothers on the other side of the Jordan. Again, even though a king was appointed and anointed, They don't have the mindset that we're a republic, that we're a country, that we stick up for each other. It's not in their mind. What are they thinking? Oh, we're just going to pay a tribute, right? But Nahash doesn't want just a tribute. Let's go on. What does he say?
יאמר עליהם נחש העמוני, בזאת אכרות לכם, מנקור לכם קוראי ימין, ושמתי החרפה על כל ישראל.
So he really says something that seems extremely unreasonable. If you're going to invade a country, why do you invade a country? There's a financial interest, right? You want them to pay a tribute. You want to extract resources from them. They're offering you resources, and what do you say? No, I don't want money. I want to take out every right eye of all of the males of Jabesh-Gilead. And I want to do that to humiliate all of Israel. So Israel should know that I'm serious. It's you got to deal with me. So it's a bit of a strange thing. Commentaries also kind of wonder why he's doing it. There are different opinions. One of them might be he's mentioning Kol Yisrael. So he's not here. He's making it clear he's not here to pick off a little part of a vulnerable part of the tribes. He sees weakness in the rest of the tribes. He wants to use them to strike fear in everyone else. He wants to make an example of them. So he's saying, I'm not here to just get some more taxes out of you guys or just to extract resources. I'm here to use you as a tool to get to everyone else, right? So and how do you do that? By injuring everyone, by humiliating them. Everyone hears about it. And then in the future, when he starts going over the Jordan and attacking other villages, no one's going to want to fight him. That's probably, if you look at other similar things in the ancient world, that's kind of what he wants. And he says, if you do that, then I'll protect you. But that's what I want. Now, this is too much for them, of course. Chavod.
ויאמרו אליו זקני יבש, הרף לנו 7 ימים, ונשלח מלאכים בכל גבול ישראל, ואם מושיע אותנו ויסענו אליך.
So far it seems that this is really playing into his plan. What do they tell him? Which is also a strange thing to say. Give us 7 days. And we'll see if we can find someone to save us from Israel. And someone will save us, then we'll fight you. And if not, then we'll come and take our eyes out. So it was kind of a strange interaction to have. But again, if you think of Nahash having a strategy to actually terrorize the rest of Israel, he would be okay with that because he wants the rest of Israel to hear about it. He doesn't think that the Israelites have a way to deal with him. He's not scared of them. Like, all right, you got your 7 days, right? And if you look at the choice of words, it's also strange. But what does it tell you? It tells you, what do they say? We're going to go to all of the borders. We're going to look for a savior, right? They don't think that they themselves can fight. They don't think in terms of raising an army. They think in terms of someone to come and save them. It's the same magical thinking that the people when they came to Shmuel and they said, we want a king who'll go before us, who'll fight our wars, who'll judge us. These people live in a very like fantastic world, where the word fantasy, not in a world where they're thinking of how to deal with a problem efficiently. Also, they don't think that they seem not to have faith that the rest of the tribes will stick up for them. They don't think the tribes are going to fight. They think maybe some magical prophet, judge type will come and save them as like one individual savior. That's what they're looking for. Go on.
ויבואו המלאכים גבעת שאול, וידברו הדברים באוזני העם, ויישאו כל העם את כולם, ויבכו.
So, translation, Malachim, what are Malachim? Messengers. Messengers are coming from to the hill of Givat Shaul, which is here, right? Or not here right now, but that was once the place called Givat Shaul, the hill of Shaul. They talk about these things to the nation. So Shaul is like his place, but he's not really involved in the conversation yet. Vayis'u kol ha'amet kolam v'yivkun. People start crying because of the humiliation, and again they're distraught, despair. They don't know how to deal with the situation, right? So It's a bit odd that we just had this Saul being anointed as a king, and now no one's even going to him. They go to Givat Shaul, and they're talking to everyone else, and Shaul's not part of the conversation. Something a bit weird, right? Go on.
והנה שאול בא אחרי הבקר מן השדה, ויאמר שאול בלעם כי יבכו, ויספרו לו את דברי אנשי יבש.
One more.
ותסלח רוח אלוהים על שאול בשומעו את הדברים האלה, ויחרפו מאוד.
So the strangeness of this incident is just getting more dramatic. Right? You have Shaul, who's been anointed king. They dragged him out. Remember, he was hiding among the Kelim, Nechbala Kelim. He was just hiding somewhere. Didn't so they kind of forced him. You're going to be the king. They make a whole ceremony. Everyone cheers him on, and now he goes back home and he's plowing the field. There's people who are following him, waiting for his orders. He's not even aware. He doesn't realize what it means to be king. That's how new the situation is. The concept of monarchy didn't exist yet in these people. So he's just working with his cattle. He's plowing the field, and he hears this. And that's now the next pasuk, v'titzlach ruach Elohim, the spirit of God that came upon him. This is a theme that's going to go with Shaul's whole career. Either he has God's spirit and he's successful, or he is extremely depressed and he fails. Okay, he's going to oscillate between highs and lows of having near prophetic inspiration to being just depressed and unable to function, unable to act. But at this point, he's getting this divine inspiration. Ruach Elohim. When he and he hears this, he gets really angry. Now, getting angry is natural. He has connections to Jabesh-Gilead, obviously. Just a few generations earlier, we had this incident that we discussed with Pilegesh Begiva, the concubine that was murdered. Now, what we see here is that the people at this time, they do not see themselves yet as one nation, right? Jabesh-Gilead doesn't expect that anyone's going to help them really. They don't think it's going to be a mass gius. There's not going to be a big miluim call. Everyone gets called up to fight. They're used to this theme where a prophet comes, some charismatic prophet comes, he gathers people from different tribes. It's very uneven. There's no central ruling. So that's the situation there. Shaul is this is his opportunity to fall into his position as a leader. Go on.
ויקח צמד בקר וינתחהו וישלח בכל גבול ישראל ביד המלאכים לאמור אשר איננו יוסף אחרי שאול ואחר שמואל כה יעשה לבקרו ויפול פחד אדוני על העם ויסעו כאיש אחד.
So, thank you. So, two things. Shaul, what is his first step? He does a mandatory draft that's backed up by serious sanctions. If you don't join the war effort, we're going to take your cattle. But he just came back from using cattle. So we see cattle is probably how people lived. You use cattle to plow your fields. If they kill your cattle, then you have no way of feeding your family. So that's going to be like the punishment for those who don't join the war. And he also invokes Samuel, who has a good reputation. Everybody likes Shmuel. So you have to follow me and Shmuel into this war, even though we don't see really Shmuel fighting, but his authority is being invoked. And are you looking for a book? You're looking for another? We have an extra one here. Oh, you have? All right, good. So he's invoking Samuel. He does a mandatory draft with sanctions for those who don't draft. But there's something else interesting in the pasuk. Does anything in the two psukim that Chacham Shmuel just read remind you of anything? Ring a bell. What is anything in the Tanakh? Do you remember another place in Tanakh where something was cut into 12 parts and sent to all the different tribes? It's something quite macabre and horrific. The what? The concubine in the valley. Yes, Jabesh-Gilead. So if you had a Tanakh here, I would ask you to go to Shoftim 18:19, and you'll notice that you don't. Most of you don't have that because you only have the Book of Samuel. But I'll give you a background. There's a traveler is traveling through Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, and this is a part of Benjamin. It's not far from Jabesh-Gilead, very wild, kind of like almost kind of Game of Thrones energies. One of these wild people who live on the other side of the wall. No, they're wildlings, okay? Benjaminites. And the same story that that Lot had with Abraham is repeated there. He's a guest in the house, and the people come and ask to bring him out, to abuse him, to rape him. And he sends out his concubine. Says it's unnatural to rape a man, take my concubine, she's a woman, and then they kill her, they murder her. The morning he finds her dead. And what he does, in order to show everyone what a terrible situation this is, he cuts her up into 12 pieces, sends her a piece of her to every tribe. It's pretty disgusting. And that's what started the civil war against Benjamin that we just spoke of earlier. And again, Jabesh-Gilead, something is getting cut up. This seems to be a bit of a kind of like, I shouldn't say a tikkun, because you can't do tikkun for things like this, but it's Benjamin on an arc of trying to redeem himself. Benjamin is a concept. So Shaul of Benjamin, what is he doing? That was used, that cutting up of a body into 12 parts was quite horrific. Is cutting up a woman into 12 parts, sending her different parts of the other tribes in order to get them to join a civil war, which only happened because en melech b'Israel, right? That's how the book of Shoftim ends, and it's a common theme. There was no king at the time, and therefore you had all this chaos and all this like insanity that was going on, right? So in order to fix that, he cuts up this person, sends parts of her all over Israel, and that starts a civil war in order to fix the problem caused by anarchy, which is because of not having a king. So the first king is fixing the anarchy, he's reversing the anarchy by cutting up cattle. Not as bad, but again, it's something to be cut up into 12 parts. There's symbolism also the fact that there's two cows, but it's another issue. He sends it out to everyone, and that he's using that as a threat. And now he's using authority. It's like a threat of sanction if you don't join the war to defend your brother who just a few generations ago was your enemy. Okay, so it's the flip side of the end of Shoftim. This is when the book of Judges and its inherent anarchy and weakness is being flipped into strength and order. Okay, which it's still not perfect, but it's like a step up. That's what the pasuk is trying to hint to you, right? So he does this draft, and we're up to pasuk chet, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chet, chapter 11, verse 8.
ויפקדם בבזק ויהיו בני ישראל 300,000 ואיש יהודה 30,000.
So he does a bezek. What does bezek mean? Bazak. What does bazak mean in Hebrew? Like lightning, quick. He does a quick draft, quick count of how many soldiers he has. And then he has 30,000 Judeans,
Oh, sorry.
30,000 Judeans, and 300,000 Israelites. So already here you can notice, if you have a sharp eye, that the writer of this book sees the Judeans and the Israelites as separate people. They're kind of the same, they're allies, but they're not one nation. So in the future, when the kingdom splits, it's not this out of nowhere, they split into two people. From the beginning, they had a bit of a different identity. The numbers make sense, you know, they were 10%, so it was a little more because it was 12 tribes, but they a bit overrepresented, which is common because Judeans were kind of a warrior tribe. But it's even enough to show that Saul is managing to gather a large coalition of all the different tribes to go to this war. Right? And they were convinced by his threat. And again, like in many legal things, you use a mixture of threats and convincing. So you invoke the authority of Samuel and you threaten to find them, to kill their livestock. Right? So he gathers these people. So he has 330,000 troops. It's a sizable force. And go on, Chavod, two psukim.
ויאמרו האחים הבאים כה תאמרון לאיש יבש גלעד מחר תהיה לכם תשועה בחום השמש ויבואו המלאכים ויגידו לאנשי יבש וישמחו ויאמרו אנשי יבש מחר נשא עליכם ועשיתם לנו ככל הטוב בעיניכם.
So Samuel already takes charge. Saul takes charge. He notifies the people of Yavesh that he's going to come help them, and he tells them what to do. The strategy or tactics is already beginning to happen. He says, tell them that you're going to come and let them do what they want to you, so they're coming to receive this punishment. But meanwhile, I'm going to come and help you. So he's already, this is the real beginning of Saul coming into his own as a leader.
ויהי למחרת וישם שאול את העם 3 ראשים ויבואו בתוך המחנה באשמורת הבוקר ויכו את עמון עד חום היום ויהי הנשארים ויפוסו ולא נשארו בם 2 יחד.
So he scheduled with Ammon that they have a midday meeting, Chom Hayom, right? Chom Hayom, when is the hottest point of the day? Is that midday, pretty much, right? Chatzot. He attacks them early. They were completely not ready because they assumed that this is the old collection of unorganized Israelite tribes that don't stick up for each other. They got attacked with a big force that was ready and that was, I don't know how trained they were, but they were motivated. At that time, all farmers had some fighting. It's Miluim, kind of like today. And what do? They attack, they defeat them, completely rout them. They were completely surprised. They completely turn the tables. None of their troops aren't organized anymore. Everyone runs to his own separate place. Go on.
ויאמר העם אל שמואל מי האומר שאול ימלוך עלינו תנו האנשים ונמיתנו.
So over here you see another familiar pattern, right? As soon as someone wins a war, his authority becomes cemented. You won a war, that gives you the right to rule. Might equals right. And remember, in the past, there were people that doubted Saul. They kind of mocked him. They didn't take him seriously. So now everyone else is, all right, you bet on the wrong horse. Let's kill everyone who didn't accept Saul in the past. This is very common for tribal people that are ruled basically by violence, right? That's like what makes you the ruler. And that's why they say what they do. Go on.
ויאמר שאול לא יומת איש ביום הזה כי היום עשה אדוני תשועה בישראל.
And so Saul gives the correct answer, right? He says, no one is dying today. Why is no one dying today? Because it's not me that won the war, right? I didn't do it. It's God that did it. So he refers the victory to God, doesn't take it upon himself. And if the victory is God's, then he doesn't look at this point in his career, he doesn't look at people that doubted him as people who deserve to be punished because they just doubted him. He doesn't see himself as, worthy of defending his position and his honor. And it seems to be the right thing to do. It's a noble thing, especially due to the fact that he wasn't a king yet. He was just being appointed king. And the only thing that made him king at the time was Samuel's anointing. And interestingly enough, that itself isn't enough. You still need to prove yourself, right? The fact that God chose you doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything. You still have to demonstrate leadership. You still have to prove that you can do it. And only then is it important to only then are you worthy of being followed, and therefore he doesn't allow them to be punished for doubting him earlier.
It's not like he sees himself as I was the
Inherently.
true Messiah and you didn't believe in me.
Exactly. I was the anointed one. How did you not believe in the real anointed one of God? I was anointed, okay, but I still need to win the war.
You know, some skeptics, and they didn't
And that's natural.
follow blindly.
Yeah.
And it's God who brought the Tishma.
Right. It's also important in these kind of things in political science, right? From a Machiavellian point of view, do you have to strike the right balance between authority and fear and motivation and love that the people have for you? If you go all the way over, if you're just too despotic, people may still fight for you because they're scared of you, but they won't truly be loyal. They'll end up rebelling against you. There was a time when, in I forget which dynasty, I was reading in like military history of one of the Chinese dynasties, where the government was trying to strengthen the military. And they decided to execute officers who fell asleep during their duties. If you're an officer and you fell asleep during your duty, you get killed. Which kind of makes sense. What better way to scare your officer corps into being good officers? The result of that was that a few officers fell asleep because they were in a long campaign. They were caught. And then they realized that they're going to get killed, right? So they mounted a rebellion just so that they don't get killed and destroyed the government. They took over the military. So there's always a balance, right, between how much fear you want to instill in the population, even for a good purpose. Saul is doing it for a good purpose to defend the outward tribes, but he also is kind of cognizant of the fact that you need to get people to be on your side. So if people doubted him and they get a little bit of chesed now, they'll also be more loyal in the future, which is another way of looking at this. If you're inclined to be a bit more cynical than looking at it from a purely religious perspective.
Another interesting thing is now that he won, everyone is coming and say, bring us those skeptics, right?
Yeah.
Not before he proved himself, where
Now everyone's much more in his team.
we all
Yeah.
believe, but he didn't believe, right? But so let's take care of the non-believers, therefore. But now that we actually won, let's take care of the non-believers.
Where before that they were kind of believing, but they were on both sides. Exactly. People get very fanatical about their beliefs when they get proof, when they get confirmation. As soon as you're confirmed, then you can start oppressing people who in the past showed doubts. Whereas before, you may have not have been the biggest believer either, because they, like you said, they weren't looking for the heads of the doubters then. They just now they woke up to that. All right. Let's go on.
ויאמר שמואל אל העם לכו ונלך גלגל ונחדש שם המלוכה.
So Samuel says, okay, we're going to go to the Gilgal. The Gilgal is also, not sure exactly, but it's also somewhere on the borderlands. So this is where we're going to start the kingdom so that it connects the different tribes from different areas. And go on.
וימליכו שם את שאול לפני אדוני בגלגל ויזבחו שם זבחים שלמים לפני אדוני וישמח שם שאול וכל אנשי ישראל עד מאוד.
So, yep, everybody goes to the Gilgal. Now everyone's very motivated. They do a proper coronation ceremony instead of just an announcement. They bring sacrifices, shlamim. Everyone's very happy. This is the peak of Shaul's career, right? Now we're gonna.
Was the Gilgal where they originally appointed him also?
I don't remember. I think originally it was in. Mitzpah. It was in the Mitzpah. So everyone's happy with the coronation, and now Shmuel is going to make an announcement to everyone about what's going to happen further on. So we still see how the authority is shifting slowly, step by step, towards Shaul.
ויאמר שמואל אל כל ישראל, הנה שמעתי בקולכם לכל אשר אמרתם לי, ואמליך עליכם מלך.
Yeah, I've listened to you guys, what you've asked. I've anointed a king. Go on.
ועתה הנה המלך מתהלך לפניכם, ואני זקנתי וסרתי, ובניי הנה מתיכם, ואני התהלכתי לפניכם מנעוריי עד היום הזה.
So he's repeating what would seem to be the obvious. Here's the king I gave you. I'm getting old. My children are here with you. It's a bit of a hint that fathers love their children even when their children are unworthy. Pasuk said a few chapters earlier that they were taking bribes. They didn't really deserve a position, but he still kind of says, okay, my sons are here with you. Like, trust my kids will help out, even though they're not important. And there's like another concurrent theme in all of Shmuel that the sons almost never continue in their father's footsteps in a good way. Okay, not in a bad way either. Some sons have bad fathers and improve. Good fathers have bad sons. It's not guaranteed, and in fact, it's sometimes the other way around. So sometimes it's impossible for a good leader to transfer those traits that made him into a good leader to his children because of circumstances, right? They grow up different. They have different. It's just unlikely. But and what makes it more tragic is they don't always see it. Shmuel doesn't really see that. He still thinks his sons are there's me and there's Saul and there's my sons. Go on.
הנני ענובי נגד אדוני ונגד משיחו את שור מי לקחתי וחמור מי לקחתי ואת מי עשקתי ואת מי רסותי ומיד מי לקחתי חופר ועני מעיני בו ואשיב לכם.
Go on.
ויאמרו לא עשקתנו ולא רסותנו ולא לקחת ביד איש מאומן.
So it's very important for Shmuel Hanavi to clear his name. It seems from these psukim that there were people who probably were making allegations about Shmuel because he gives a lot of detail. They didn't take one donkey, one ox. I never took bribes. I never showed deference to any one of you more than someone else for any reason, nor was I particularly harsh on anyone. He's going through great detail to kind of be absolved. Something a bit personal here. I'm not sure what the background is, but also it's important for Shmuel to set the position of the Navi for the rest of the Tanach, like to kind of give it its boundaries. You're going to see in the future the Tanakh there's various Nevi'im. Okay, Navi is kind of like a position. It's an institution. You have a Nevi'e Emet and Nevi'e Sheker. True prophets, false prophets. Nevi'e Hashem, prophets of God, and Nevi'e Habal, prophets of the idols. And besides for the one being true and one being false, one being godly and one being idolatrous, there's a common theme among the true prophets, which is they all are altruistic and they are abhorred by not just bribery, but by receiving any enumeration for spiritual services. Okay, it was seen as very negative to get money from the king or from the people. You couldn't donate money to them. Earlier, we saw that Shaul was looking for a gift to bring to the prophet, but the prophet doesn't want it. There's a reason for that. The prophet's position is to be critical of the entire nation, and especially of the elites, especially of the priestly class, especially the nobility, the military. You can't be completely critical if you're dependent on them, which is why, like, a chief rabbinate of the country cannot properly be critical of the government because they're being paid by the government, right? So it's in the prophetic tradition to always be this angry, critical, separate institution that's only supported by God, and they were often either very wealthy or very poor, but regardless, they never were part of the financial consideration of whatever form of government existed at the time. Shmuel is starting, like, just kind of making that clear over here. This is what I did, and he's kind of telling you in the future, this is how you should be, right? And maybe one day we'll be like this. Go on.
I think part of why he's trying to come clear and make sure everyone, publicly admits that it's the whole pretext to asking for a king was because his sons weren't going in the right way, right? They were sick of all the corruption that was going on, and they said, "Nevaksha melech leshoftenu," and now I want you to appoint the king in order to judge us.
Yeah.
Right? And now Shemuel says, okay, he says, look, God says to Shemuel, says, Lo otcha ma'asu, it's not you they despise, it's who despise, mimeloch alehem, right? And he says, and do what they say and appoint a king. And so now that he appointed a king, he wants to make it clear. There was like no bribery. I want everyone to admit publicly there was no bribery going on as long as as long as there was no king and the prophet was the shofet.
Yeah. Yeah, he wants to make that clear, like you said, and he wants that people in the future to think in those terms as well. And he wants to, he also wants to affect how Saul's kingdom will happen. Like he realizes his time is running out, he's getting older, he's keeps saying that, I'm getting old, time is running out. He wants to kind of leave his mark the best he can for the future.
ויאמר עליהם העד אדוני בכם ועד משיחו היום הזה כי לא מסתם בידי מאומה ויאמר עד.
So again, he's repeating it. I want you to witness that you haven't found any corruption in me at all. And they said, yes, we haven't. Go on.
ויאמר שמואל אל העם אדוני אשר עשה את משה ואת אהרון ואשר העלה את אבותיכם מארץ מצרים ועתה התייסבו וישפטה איתכם לפני אדוני את כל צדקות אדוני אשר עשה איתכם ואת אבותיכם.
So nice. So over here, it's another interesting thing is happening. He's going to go through a review, like a kind of a performance review of the people from the time of Moses until his time, right? And he's saying, I'm judging you now. I'm going to give you this judgment about everything that happened until now, right? Several important things to know. The king is not the shofet. There's a bit of a separation of powers here. There's still going to be prophets and there's going to be kings. They're not the same thing. It's not this religious, theocratic dictatorship, as some people think it is. There's a king who's an administrator, a military leader. He has to function within the parameters of the Torah, but he's not the arbitrator of what the Torah is. Right? There's Beit Din, there's a judge, and the Shmuel's like, yeah, you have a king, but here I am judging you about everything that happened. And then he says something very profound. Seems very obvious, but you think about it, the profundity here is very great. It's worth thinking about, right? He says, all of the kindness that God has showed you since you left Egypt and you've come here, right? And then if you think about it, if you just read the whole Tanach until here, okay, God took us out of Egypt, but things were not great up until now. Where is the kindness? So of course, in the Tanakh, as we're going to see, everything bad is being blamed on our bad behaviors, Avodah Zarah and so on, right? But if you think about it deeper, what Shmuel is saying, he's giving a very empowering message that's also very sobering. He's saying, God gave us all of the tools we need to succeed in every field and to do well. And we failed him. Our lack of success is us failing God. Right? Like similar to what we said earlier, right? They wanted a king because they looked for someone to kind of magically lead them. And in that, God says, you failed me. Here too, he's going to say every time we lost is because we didn't get our act together and we didn't do the right thing by God. But it's not just about doing the right thing by God in the traditional sense. The right thing by God is succeeding with the tools that He gave you to overcome the challenges that He knew you can overcome. And every time we don't overcome a challenge that we can overcome, that's probably most challenges, we're kind of disappointing God a bit. It's not idolatry, but it's kind of like idolatry. Oh, it happened because this one stopped me and that one stopped. So it's the message here is it's clearly, it's general, it's national, but it's also individual. And that's why it's like the prophet is saying something very deep and very sobering that you need to stop and think about what he's saying for a moment. Go on.
כאשר בא יעקב מצרים, ויזעקו אבותיכם אל אדוני, וישלח אדוני את משה ואת אהרון, ויוציאו את אבותיכם ממצרים, וישיבום במקום הזה.
Go on.
וישכחו את אדוני אלוהיהם, וימכור אותם ביד סיסרא, שר וחסור, וביד פלישתים, וביד מלך מואב, וילחמו בה.
Again, it's a short review of the military challenges in Sefer Shoftim. We were defeated by three different groups, by Sisera, by the Philistines, and by the Moabites.
ויזעקו אל אדוני ויאמרו חטאנו כי עזבנו את אדוני ונעבוד את הבעלים ואת העשתרות ועתה הצילנו מיד אויבינו ונעבדך.
So you've repented from idolatry, from worshiping the Baalim. Baalim are these male idolatrous figurines, and the Ashtoreth. What's the Ashtoreth? You know what kind of idol that is? It's a female kind of idol. We still have in the museum, biblical museum, the figurines that people use to worship. So again, that's this relying on, it symbolizes something. It's not just a sin. It symbolizes relying on magical acts, amulets that will get you out of trouble. But then you repent and say, we'll only worship God and reject all these things, right? We have in the Museum of Biblical History, there's no figurines of God because a figurine of God would be the same thing. It would look like a figurine of Baal, right? It would be idolatry. So once you and it's very symbolic. It's like to serve God, to worship God is to reject all religion. It's to reject all intermediaries. So only once you did that and you repented, then you were given victory. Meaning that's how you're victorious. Go on.
וישלח אדוני את ירבעל ואת בדן ואת יפתח ואת שמואל ויסל אתכם מיד אויביכם מסביב ותשבו בטח.
He refers to himself here in third person, which is interesting, but he's looking at it as a historian because historically you had these individual prophets and judges that saved you, that brought you back to yourselves, and then you had security. Go on.
ותראו כי נחש מלך בני עמון בעליכם ותאמרו לי לא כי מלך ימלוך עלינו ואדוני אלוהינו מלככם.
So this is an interesting pasuk, which got me to start looking into different theories of biblical interpretation. Because what Shmuel is saying, he's saying, you've seen that Nahash, we just had the incident of Nahash happen, right? And then you said, we want a king. But we had the incident of Nahash after Shaul was anointed, right?
It has only 7 days.
Yeah, it happens. So what's the deal? What happens? So I looked it up and I don't have enough detail about it, but apparently there's an opinion that thinks that that also explains a lot of the difficulties in the previous chapter. That the incident with Nahash happened before Shaul was anointed, and that's actually why they didn't call on Shaul, because he wasn't anointed yet, and that was a crisis that brought it forth. Why was it placed later? Editing, I don't know. I don't have a good explanation for it, but it kind of solves some of the weird anachronisms of the order of the chapters, because again, they don't really go to Shaul. Shaul hears about it, he gets angry, and then he gathers people. So it's possible that Shaul started his rebellion earlier, but that creates a whole set of other problems, because if he did that, then why is he running away from the kingdom when he gets anointed? It's a problem. But this pasuk makes the previous chapter even more difficult to decipher as far as the order of things, right? So don't have a good solution for this yet this week. Maybe next week I'll have more on that, right? I'm just pointing out, you understand the problem, right? Everybody gets the problem? Okay, I'll repeat it. Shmuel is giving an account of what just happened. He starts from Egypt. We got out of Egypt and God saved us. And then you guys rebelled against God and you suffered. And then you repented and we came back. And you get all these like prophets and judges that helped out. And then Nahash ben Ammon came, and you had this terrible fear, this terrible crisis. And then you asked me for a king, right? That's what he says. But we just read that they asked for a king way before Nahash Ammon. Nahash, the king of Ammon, threatens them. And then we see that they ask for a king, and then they get given a king, and then Shaul goes back home, and then Nahash ben Ammon shows up, and then he kind of gets called in to be a king. So the order is wrong. He was not. The Nahash was supposed to have happened after he was anointed, not before. And he's indicating here that Nahash ben Ammon happened before. So what Shmuel is saying in this verse in chapter 12 contradicts what we saw in chapter 11. Doesn't mean the story isn't true, but the order is wrong. Chapter 11 should be where 9 is. Chapter 11 of the Nahash ben Ammon war should have happened before the anointing of Saul, according to what we just read in chapter 12. That's the question. Don't have a proper solution for it yet. All right. There's people that think that the Tanach doesn't owe us a consecutive. They say "En mukdam u'mauchar b'Torah." They apply that to Tanakh. Like the Tanakh is allowed to give you the story in the wrong order, and you got to figure it out on your own. But over here, it's a bit much. Like it's kind of confusing. Okay, so I do not have suggest.
What Shmuel is doing is he's giving historical context to everything, to all the historical data that happened. He's putting it into a narrative. Right now, wars they don't just break out and end in one day, right? Even our war now with Iran, right? It's not.
It's been cooking for a while.
Right? Or Epic Fury, whichever one you call it now, it's just a different phase in the same war that most people try to associate with
October 7th.
I really associate it with 1948, right? It's the same war that's going on. So even when Jabesh-Gilead comes,
when Nahash ben Ammon,
when Nahash comes to Jabesh-Gilead, right, and he wants them to pay tribute, he could have just started off as paying tribute, and then he wants to further humiliate them. In the meantime, Shaul may have already been appointed. The whole story with Shmuel, and now he said when he wants to further humiliate them, that's like the trigger for the next battle.
Are you saying that it's possible also that? Are you saying that it's possible that Nahash ben Ammon was a threat to Israel way before this, but the actual incident happened after? So the actual incident of him showing up at Jabesh-Gilead happened, but it's
not just that he was a threat, but there were things going on between
Ammon and Israel.
And Jabesh-Gilead.
Makes sense. There were wars between Ammon and that solves the problem. Solved it. Fair enough. Okay, don't wait till next week. It's been solved. All right. So
that's my theory. It doesn't exempt you from coming up with your own.
Review chapter 10, 11, 12, and like pay attention on your own, go through it and see if there are things that don't fit. I already told you what doesn't fit. It seems weird that we just had a very dramatic announcement of Saul being king, right? And then there's this national, and why was he anointed as king? He's going to fight our wars and he's going to, go before us. Now we have a major military challenge, and nobody really goes to Shaul. Shaul's working the fields. So I explained, oh, he was working because he didn't care, he didn't feel he's king, and I gave explanations for it. But it's still weird that they don't go to him, that he hears it secondhand from other people. Why would he hear it secondhand from other people when he's already king? Yeah, so that's one of the things you need to look into. And you look also when Ammon comes, he doesn't know that the king was appointed. If Saul was appointed, why doesn't he send an emissary to Saul? Could be explained. He didn't think Saul was serious. He wasn't tested yet. He just attacks a side city. But if you put all that together, it creates a bit of a problem. Like something's wrong with the order. Look at it over next week, and we'll continue next week with um, the next chapter. All right, any questions?
Yeah, and the Ashtoreth, what was the purpose of using it for fertility? Or why people always do
So
that?
usually in the polytheistic societies, you always had a male god and you had his female consort. So Baal and Ashtoreth are like two male and female gods, and they worship them in different ways. Baal had a specific ritual, and usually the Ashtoreth were worshipped was more like you say fertility. Sometimes the females were the war gods, but like it was more associated with nature. It was under trees, right? Tachat kol Itzra Anan. It was more this nature worship, and Baal was this fiery thunder god, right? So it was they're just different ways of appealing to divine energies as they saw it, and as a way to solve their world problems, right? So that's what it was.
Last week about the other possible location for the tomb of Rachel in
Yes.
the entrance of Benjamin. Where that place might be it nowadays, in your opinion?
I don't remember. I remember reading about it. There's the alternative Rachel's tomb place. I don't remember where it is. My navigation skills are weak. This map is as good as it's gonna get. What?
Is that near where they say that was the Shmuel cavern up on the top, like on the
There's how many Samuel tombs do we have so far? Two, right? There's Nebi Samuel and there's Jabesh-Gilead. You know the joke.
Same place.
No, there's two places that people pray at both places. As thinking of praying at Shmuel's tomb, there was a tour guide, and he took a group of tourists to Nebi Samuel, and he said, this is where Samuel was buried. And then a few days later, he was in Kever Shmuel, which is a whole different place, and he forgot that it was the same group. He said, oh, here's where Samuel was buried. So somebody who paid attention asked him, we just went to another place last week. So he goes, oh, come on, that was Shmuel Alef. This is Shmuel Bet. So I'm not sure. I tend to be very skeptical when people have exact locations of tombs. Famous tombs to me are something I'm skeptical about. So I don't know. But from what we read last week, it looks like Rachel's tomb is on the border of Benjamin. The Rachel's tomb that we have is not on the border of Benjamin.
yeah, you said.
It's completely Judean. So where would it be? Somewhere between Beit El and Chizmeh, maybe. Maybe Chizmeh, I don't know. Like
The Adam, there's the Chizmah there.
that's what
They
they
said
have.
that they consider it.
The Rachel too.
Nobody actually goes there.
Nobody goes to the real Rachel.
It's near a yeshuv called the Adam.
Anybody online that have questions? All right. Thank you guys. I'll see you next week. Baruch Adonai la'olam. Amen v'amen.